I never thought I'd find myself tangled up in my past, especially not with someone who was supposed to be off limits. At 29, I was living in Vancouver, trying to move on from a messy breakup with Liam, my ex-boyfriend of 4 years. Our relationship had ended on a sour note, filled with arguments, misunderstandings, and a sense of betrayal that had left me questioning my judgment. After the breakup, I did my best to distance myself from everything that reminded me of Liam, including his circle of friends. But despite my efforts to start fresh, there was one person who refused to fade into the background: Ethan, Liam's best friend. Ethan was the kind of guy who always stood by Liam's side, no matter what. He was loyal, dependable, and had been there through every up and down of our relationship. I never saw Ethan as anything more than a friend of my ex, someone who was supposed to be off limits. But all of that changed one rainy evening when Ethan showed up at my doorstep, soaking wet and carrying a weight of his own. It was a typical Vancouver night, the kind where the rain never seemed to let up, and I was curled up on my couch, half watching a movie and half scrolling through my phone. When the doorbell rang, I hesitated, wondering who could possibly be visiting at this hour. But when I opened the door, I was surprised to find Ethan standing there, his clothes drenched and his usually composed expression replaced with one of uncertainty. "Ethan? What are you doing here?" I asked, stepping aside to let him in out of the rain. "Hey, sorry for dropping by like this," he said, shaking off the rain from his jacket. I needed to talk to you." I nodded, feeling a mix of curiosity and apprehension. I hadn't seen Ethan much since the breakup, and I couldn't help but wonder what had prompted his unexpected visit. "It's fine. Do you want a towel or something?" "That would be great," he replied, offering a small, grateful smile. I fetched a towel from the bathroom and handed it to him, watching as he dried off and tried to compose himself. There was an awkward silence between us, the kind that comes from too much history and too many unspoken words. I motioned for him to sit down, and he took a seat on the edge of the couch, still fidgeting with the towel. "What's going on, Ethan?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "You look like you've seen a ghost." He laughed nervously, running a hand through his wet hair. "Yeah, it's been a rough day. Actually, it's been a rough few months." I nodded, unsure of what to say. I knew that Ethan had been dealing with his own struggles, work stress, family issues, but I hadn't expected him to come to me for support. After all, I was just his best friend's ex, someone who should be out of the picture. "Listen, I know this is weird," Ethan began, his voice hesitant. "But I've been wanting to talk to you for a while now. About Liam. And about us." I felt my heart rate quicken, the mention of Liam's name bringing back a flood of memories I had tried so hard to suppress. "What about Liam?" I asked cautiously. Ethan sighed, leaning back against the couch. "He's been going through a lot since you guys broke up. And to be honest, so have I. I've been trying to be there for him, but I can't ignore how I feel anymore." I frowned, confused by his words. "What do you mean?" He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and something else, something I couldn't quite place. "I've always been on Liam's side, you know? Through everything. But I can't pretend that I haven't felt something for you. Even when you were together, I tried to push it away, to ignore it. But after you guys split, it just got harder." I stared at him, my mind racing. I had never considered the possibility that Ethan might have feelings for me, let alone that he had been harboring them for so long. It felt like a betrayal to Liam, to our shared history, but there was also a part of me that was undeniably flattered, intrigued even. "Ethan, I don't know what to say," I admitted, my voice shaky. "This is a lot." "I know," he said quickly, his expression pained. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put this on you. But I've been keeping it in for so long, and I couldn't keep pretending that it's not there." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Why now? Why tell me all this now? Because I'm tired of lying, he confessed, his voice filled with frustration. To myself, to Liam, to everyone. I needed you to know how I feel, even if it's wrong, even if nothing comes of it. There was a heavy silence as his words hung in the air. I could feel the weight of his confession, the intensity of his emotions, and I didn't know how to respond. I had been so focused on moving on from Liam that I hadn't considered the possibility of someone else, let alone someone so closely tied to my past. I appreciate you being honest, I said carefully, choosing my words with caution. But Ethan, this is complicated. You're Liam's best friend. I don't want to make things messier than they already are. He nodded, his expression somber. I get it. And I don't expect anything from you, really. I just needed you to know. Even if it changes nothing, at least I finally said it. I watched him, unsure of what to do next. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to offer him some kind of solace, but I knew that crossing that line could have consequences I wasn't ready to face. But as I looked at him, soaked from the rain and burdened by his own emotions, I couldn't help but feel a pull, a desire to connect, to understand. Ethan, I'm not going to lie, I began, my voice soft. I've always thought you were a great guy. And I appreciate you being there for Liam even when things got tough between us. But I don't know if I can give you what you're looking for. He smiled sadly, nodding. I figured as much. But thank you for listening. It means more than you know. We sat in silence for a moment, the rain outside providing a soothing backdrop to the tension in the room. I could feel the weight of Ethan's confession settling over us, and I knew that things would never be the same between us. But there was also a strange sense of relief, a feeling that at least now, the truth was out in the open. As the night went on, we talked about lighter things, trying to shift the mood back to something more familiar. It was awkward at first, but eventually, we found our rhythm, and I was reminded of why I had always liked Ethan in the first place. He was easy to be around, honest, and kind-hearted, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of comfort in his presence. When it was time for him to leave, Ethan stood up, hesitating for a moment before turning to face me. Sam, I'm sorry if I made things weird. I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. It's okay, I assured him, offering a small smile. I'm glad you told me. And for what it's worth, I'm here if you ever need someone to talk to. He nodded, his expression softening. Thanks, Sam. That means a lot. As I closed the door behind him, I leaned against it, my mind spinning with everything that had just happened. I knew that Ethan's confession had complicated things, that it had brought up emotions I wasn't ready to deal with. But there was also a part of me that was grateful for his honesty, that appreciated the vulnerability it took for him to come to me. The next few days were a mix of confusion and introspection. I couldn't stop thinking about Ethan, about the way he had looked at me and the sincerity of his words. I tried to push it out of my mind, to focus on work and my own healing, but it was easier said than done. Every time I passed by places that reminded me of Liam, I couldn't help but wonder how Ethan fit into the picture now. Then, one evening, as I was leaving the office, I received a text from Ethan. Hey, I hope this isn't weird, but do you want to grab a coffee sometime? No pressure, just as friends. I stared at the message, my heart racing. I knew that spending more time with Ethan could blur the already thin line between friendship and something more, but I couldn't deny the curiosity that tugged at me. I had always seen Ethan as just Liam's best friend, but now, the idea of getting to know him on my own terms intrigued me. Sure. Coffee sounds good. We met at a small cafe near my apartment, a cozy spot with dim lighting and a warm atmosphere. When I arrived, Ethan was already there, looking more relaxed than he had during our last encounter. He greeted me with a smile, and I felt a flutter of nerves as I took a seat across from him. Thanks for coming, he said, his tone casual. I wasn't sure if you'd want to. I figured it couldn't hurt, I replied, trying to keep things light. It's just coffee, after all. We spent the next hour talking about everything and nothing, our jobs, our favorite movies, the latest gossip in the city. It felt good, natural, like we were just two friends catching up. But underneath the easy conversation, there was a tension, a lingering awareness of the unspoken emotions that had brought us here. At one point, as Ethan was telling a story about a disastrous date he had recently been on, I found myself laughing more freely than I had in weeks. It was a simple, genuine moment, and I realized that I had missed this feeling, the ease of connection, the comfort of being around someone who truly got me. Ethan, I'm glad we did this, I said suddenly, cutting him off mid-sentence. I've missed having you around. He looked at me, surprised but pleased. I've missed you too, Sam. More than I realized. Our eyes met, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of something, a spark that hadn't been there before. I knew that we were treading dangerous ground, that our connection was fraught with complications. But I couldn't bring myself to regret it. Being with Ethan felt right in a way that I hadn't expected, and I didn't want to let that go. As we finished our coffee, Ethan suggested a walk by the nearby park, and I agreed, wanting to prolong our time together. The night air was cool, the streets quiet, and we strolled side by side, talking about our favorite books and the best places to grab a late-night snack. But as we reached the park, the conversation shifted, and the lightheartedness from earlier began to fade. Ethan stopped, turning to face me with a serious expression. Sam, I know I said I didn't expect anything from you, he began, his voice steady. But the truth is, I still have feelings for you. And I don't know how to ignore them. I felt my pulse quicken, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. I had tried to keep things platonic, to focus on rebuilding my own life, but the connection with Ethan was undeniable. He was someone who had seen me at my best and worst, who had stood by my side even when things fell apart with Liam. And now, standing here with him, I couldn't help but wonder if this was the start of something new. Ethan, I'm scared, I admitted, my voice trembling. I don't want to hurt Liam. I don't want to ruin what we have. He nodded, reaching out to gently take my hand. I know. And I don't want to push you into anything. But I can't pretend that I don't care about you, Sam. Not anymore. We stood there, the city lights casting soft shadows around us, and I realized that I had a choice to make. I could walk away, keep things simple and avoid the messiness of my past. Or I could take a chance, let myself feel, and see where this connection with Ethan might lead. I don't know what the future holds, I said finally, squeezing his hand. But I'm willing to find out. With you. Ethan smiled, a look of relief washing over his face. That's all I needed to hear. We continued our walk, hand in hand, the weight of the past slowly lifting from our shoulders. It wasn't a perfect solution, and I knew there would be challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. I felt ready to take on whatever came next, with Ethan by my side. As we reached the end of the park, Ethan pulled me into a gentle hug, his warmth enveloping me. And in that moment, I knew that whatever happened, we would figure it out together. One step at a time.